Hi, my name is Christopher Penn, co-founder and chief data scientist of TrustInsights.ai, and today I'm happy to welcome you to 5 practical applications of artificial intelligence for content marketing here at CMC. If you'd like to get all of the session materials, I know it's going to be available online, obviously online to watch this, but if you like the transcript, the slides, the PDFs, and all that stuff, you can get all of that at wherecanigettheslides.com. It'll be the most recent talk on that page. So let's dig in. Why do we care about artificial intelligence? Well, our stakeholders, the chief marketing officers, the CEOs, the boards of directors that we answer to, are asking us for 3 things. Always, right? Better, faster, and cheaper. Can we make our marketing better, faster, and cheaper? And the answer is, well, let's take a look. Let's tackle better first. Is marketing, the work that we do, getting better? In the 2019 Pricewaterhouse CEO survey, when asked about the types of data and information and the priorities that CEOs had for their organizations, CEOs said the number 1 priority, data about your customers and their preferences, clients' preferences and needs. Financial forecasts and projections, number 2. Data about your brand, number 3. These are all rated as critical, that top yellow line, 94%, 92%, 90%. Really, really important priorities. But when asked, are you getting that information? Look at the bottom yellow lines from 2019. 15% of CEOs say that they're getting data about their customers and clients' preferences and needs. That's not a formula for winning, right? 41% get good financial forecasts. 24% get data about their brand and reputation. Marketing is not delivering what the C-suite wants. When we look at the CMO survey, which is the Chief Marketing Officer survey run by Duke University twice a year, marketing just is not getting the job done. We are continuing to show weakness in integrating customer information across channels on a scale of 1 to 7, where you're using information very effectively at the 7 level and not at all at the 1 level. We've kind of flatlined for the last decade, really. So we're not doing a great job of taking the information that we have and putting it to good use. When asked in the most recent CMO survey, the 2020 version, can you quantify the impact of your marketing spend? Man, only 35% of CMOs say they can prove the impact quantitatively of their marketing. That's pretty bad, right? That means that a little less than 2/3 of the time, we're just kind of guessing, or we have absolutely no idea if we're getting any marketing impact. And even worse, this one breaks my heart personally. When asked, what percentage of time was marketing analytics data used to make decisions at your organization? CMOs say, it brings a tear to my eye, 37% of the time. 37.7% of the time. So again, almost 2/3 of the time, we're just guessing. We're just making things up. We're resorting to what's called the hippo problem, the highest individually paid person's opinion in the room, about how to make decisions that impact the quality of our marketing. So we're not getting better. Okay, maybe we're getting faster, right? That could be happening. Way back in 2017, IDC and Cisco Seagate tried to project how much data the world was going to create. And they said by 2020, we'll be creating about 40 zettabytes of data. It's actually probably substantially more now because we've had just an explosion of things happening online, like all of us working online. But 40 zettabytes is an impossibly large number to wrap your brain around. Here's a good way to compare it. If you were to start watching Netflix and you didn't stop to eat, to sleep, to perform any biological functions except stare at Netflix, and you started 55 million years ago, you would just be using 1 zettabyte of data today. Right? That's how much a zettabyte is. And we're going to create anywhere from 40 to 50 of these this year, probably more. Again, we're all at home. And so that's how much data is coming at us. It's so fast and so much of it. When you look at what happens in an internet minute, this is a great story done by Laura Lewis. Year over year, in 2019, 18 million texts sent. In 2020, 19 million. 4.5 million views on YouTube per minute, 4.7 this year. 764,000 hours of Netflix watched this year compared to 694,000 last year. And 1.6 million Tinder swipes this year compared to 1.4 million last year. All that Netflix and chill. Apparently, I'm guessing most everyone's swiping right. But the world is changing so fast. Even just something as simple as news stories. Already this year, we've created 21 million news stories this year. Right? Now, if you are in the business of marketing your company, trying to get seen, your content, trying to get it seen, this is a daunting backdrop to try and do that against. So we're not better. We're not faster. We're at least cheaper, right? We've got to be cheaper. We've got to be more efficient with our money. No. We're spending more on training and development than ever. We are using 8.6% of our company's revenues on marketing budget, which is a tremendous amount of money. Right? So we're spending, and yet we can't justify the spend 2/3 of the time. 2/3 of the time we're guessing on what's happening. So this is a really bad situation for us. CEOs, when asked, what are you going to do to drive revenue growth? And this is before the pandemic, right? This is before the craziness that has overtaken our world. They were saying, we're going to look at operational efficiencies as the number one place to drive revenue growth. We all know in business that really means budget cuts, right? We all really know it means reducing headcount. And then, of course, you throw a global crisis in the mix, and it's all some businesses are going to be able to do to stay afloat. So we're in a really bad position as marketers, right? We're spending more. We can't demonstrate the results of what we're doing. And we're facing crazy times. So how do we get out of this trap? One of the answers, not the answer, but one of the answers is the use of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence promises us three things, right? Acceleration, accuracy, and automation. Acceleration means we get to the answers that we need faster. We can get to market faster. We can get content created faster. We can do all these things at a higher pace, at a faster pace, to try and keep up with that crazy internet minute. No human can read that many news stories a day, right? If you take 21 million news stories so far this year, and you break it down, it works out to like 200 some odd stories an hour. No, I'm sorry, a minute. You can't read 200 news stories a minute. Nobody can. You can't even read the headlines to 200 stories in a minute. That's how fast the world is happening. So we need machines to help us match that speed. AI gives us the ability to be more accurate, to process data with greater accuracy. Anybody who's ever copied and pasted something incorrectly knows how prone to mistakes we are. And the bigger our data, the more of it we're working with, the more likely it is that having humans in the mix will mess things up. And finally, automation. Automation means we get to do fewer tasks that frankly are low-value tasks. I used to work in a public relations agency a few years ago, and I remember there's this one poor role in this company that all this person did was copy and paste things from Google search results into like spreadsheets and PowerPoint decks. 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week. I'm like, how have you not clawed your eyeballs out yet? But that's what they did because they didn't know how to automate. They didn't know how to use technology to do that job. That same job, distilling down that information, is something you could do in minutes and you have the whole rest of the week off. Still get your work done, probably do it better. So acceleration, accuracy, and automation. No surprise, this maps to faster, better, and cheaper. Right? AI helps us do these things. So let's take a moment to define what artificial intelligence is, because it's a big term. People love throwing this term around. Artificial intelligence is the practice of getting machines to replicate tasks that are normally reserved for human intelligence. If you're hearing the sound of my voice and it makes sense to you, you're using what's called language processing. If you can see me on this screen right now and these slides, and it's not gibberish, you are using vision. Artificial intelligence is a blanket term for getting machines to think like humans. And it all begins with the foundation of statistics and probability. Right? That's that plus data, the raw ingredients of AI, the stepping stones. in the end, AI is math, not magic. It is just an application of math. If we were comparing this to cooking as an analogy, stats and probability and data would be the raw ingredients and the raw tools that we would start the cooking process with. Combining those techniques into repeatable procedures is called algorithms, right? This is the bigger building blocks of AI, and you use algorithms all the time. If you've ever done an A/B split test to test out some content, does this content perform better than this content? You've used an algorithm. You've used actually a few of them together, but you're familiar with algorithms. They're like recipes or pre-packaged ingredients that give you a consistent result every single time. But you, the humans, still have to do an awful lot of that work, right? Because it's like cooking. You got to do the work. Now, where things change is when you start into what's called machine learning. This is a part of a subset of artificial intelligence. Machine learning is when we train machines on data and then they write their own software. They learn to do the thing. It's like taking a robot and trying to teach it to cook pancakes, right? When you use machine learning, you are getting the machines to teach themselves. And there's two branches of machine learning. There's what's called supervised learning and unsupervised. Supervised learning is telling a machine how to recognize patterns. If I show a machine a bunch of pancakes, I can eventually get that machine to recognize, is what I'm about to make a pancake? Can it replicate it? I'll make a pancake. Does it look like it? No. Does it look like it now? Yes. Does it look like it now? Maybe. Getting a machine to eventually recognize a pancake and then make its own and continue to tune against that training data set of what a pancake is supposed to look like and taste like would be a silly example of machine learning. The machine doesn't know how to cook pancakes, but by looking at a model of existing pancakes and replicating until it gets close to that model, it learns. It teaches itself. The most well-known example of machine learning, supervised machine learning, is IBM Watson. The Watson Oncology Center, a number of years ago, was working with the University of Tokyo. And in this study, there was a woman who was suffering from a certain type of leukemia. And they were treating it, and she wasn't getting any better. She's actually getting sicker. So they sequenced her genome, and then they fed Watson 233,000 journals of oncology and said, figure out what's going wrong here, right? We have the end result, the genome. We have all this data. Go through and figure out what matches this outcome. And it did. It went through, it said, aha, you're treating the wrong type of leukemia. You were treating this type, you should be treating this type. They changed the treatment. The woman made a full recovery. Pretty cool. Even cooler, it did it in 11 minutes. Right? That's a really good example of supervised learning, how machines can find the needles in the haystack, if you will. The second type of machine learning is called unsupervised machine learning. And this is where we give machines a whole bunch of data and say, we don't know what's in the box, right? We got a whole bunch of stuff. We don't know what's in here. Help us categorize it. Help us classify it. Help us make sense of it. When you deal with social media data, for example, all these replies, you've got a bunch of really unstructured, messy data. When you look at 100,000 blog posts, there's a tremendous amount of stuff in there. What are they about? How long are they? All these things. Unsupervised learning is like taking all that stuff and trying to categorize it. In this silly cooking example, if you imagine a robot, it would be looking at certain things like on the left, is that a pancake? No. How about the thing in the pan? Maybe. What about the thing on the right? No, that's kind of like a pancake, but not really. What about the things on top? Well, that's the shape of a pancake, but it's the wrong color. So the machine would look at this data and classify and separate all this data. Imagine a box full of kids' building blocks, right? You could classify and separate, colors or shapes or sizes. That's unsupervised learning. Again, a content example. I was getting ready for a meeting, and I was going to be with a client to talk to them about a bunch of articles about them, and I had not read them. And the client wanted to know, what are the major themes in these articles? So using an unsupervised classification algorithm in what's called text mining, taking data out of text, we turned 71,000 paragraphs from 2,600 stories into a single chart that said these are the major topics, and the machine did it in 5 minutes. All right, so I got to the meeting on time. I actually had time for a cup of coffee, and got the client the answer they needed very, very quickly. And again, more accurately. So that's an example of unsupervised learning that we would be using in content marketing. Now, there's a third, not branch, but I guess a sub-branch called deep learning. And deep learning is when you combine different techniques of supervised and unsupervised learning together to set up, the best analogy is really distillation. If you think about starting with a big old bucket of mash and you distill that down until you get something that is like a bourbon, that's what deep learning is. Deep learning takes all these different techniques and a huge amount of data and just distills it down and down and down until you get just the essence of what was in that data. And the net effect of something like deep learning is that you get machines that can think like us, but only better, faster, and cheaper. With limitations. Even the best and biggest and most powerful models still today do not have what I call broad understanding. And we'll talk about some of the limitations of AI in a second, but they're not conscious yet. They're not sentient yet. So to recap, what is AI? It's stats and probability that are turned into algorithms that are deployed with machine learning, and in some cases using deep learning. Now you may be saying, why do I need to know this? I'm a content marketer. I'm not a data scientist. I'm not an AI engineer. Well, for good or ill, there are an awful lot of vendors in the marketing technology space right now, and every single one of them is putting that they have AI inside their product. And knowing the lingo allows you to build what we would call a detector of excremento de toro, as our Spanish friends would say, to know, is this vendor even putting the right words together? Very often when I go to conferences, even virtual ones like this, and get a chance to talk to some of the vendors, they've got all the flashy stuff, and the sales guys are out there, hustling and doing demos. And you ask them a question like, okay, you say you've got AI in this product. What kind? It's the proprietary algorithm. Yeah. Broadly speaking, what kind? Is it supervised or unsupervised machine learning? You see their eyes get really big. And that's when hopefully they let you talk to an engineer. By the way, pro tip, if you're evaluating a vendor and you ask to speak to an engineer and they say no, or they say yes, but the salesperson has to be with the engineer, don't buy from that vendor. They've got something to hide. If a vendor lets you speak with engineering directly with no supervision, they're the real deal because they're not afraid of what the engineers are going to say. Some of the best vendors that I work with in the machine learning space, the engineers are like, oh yeah, here's how we do this. We do this, we do this, we do this, because they know that none of us have any interest in replicating their exact secret sauce. Just knowing the techniques they're using. It's like, talking to Gordon Ramsay. Oh, what size frying pan do you use on this? Or, how long do you cook this for? We're not going to be Gordon Ramsay, but we might just want to know, like, what kind of pan is that, so that we could learn it for ourselves, but not take away from them. So think about that. That's why you need to know this stuff. Now, the state of the art, where things are going next, are things like, well, where they are now is things like Project Debater. This was a thing that IBM did about a year ago, where they put up a machine on stage with human debate champions and had the machine debate in conversation with this human champion about the topic of subsidized kindergarten. And then neither participant, the machine or the champion, were given any prep time. They were told the topic 15 minutes before. And the machine delivered credible arguments, listened to its competitor, rebutted its arguments, and made decent closing statements. That's a really cool combination of a bunch of different techniques that shows you where this stuff could go, how it could be useful for things like customer service or content generation. What can machines not do? Well, right now there's 4 big areas that machines simply can't do at present. Number 1 is empathy. Machines cannot feel, period. They cannot put themselves in somebody else's shoes in the way that you and I can. So empathy is a major gap. Machines cannot exert judgment, and by that I mean exceptions to rules, because by definition they are the rules. You go to a restaurant, right? Well, you used to go to restaurants. You get some kind of good service from a company, and And you might say, the rule is 20%, but you might tip a little bit more. Or in the reverse, you're friendly to the person at the grocery store, and they let an expired coupon slide. They're using judgment. We're using judgment to say, you know what? There are conditions here that warrant accepting the rules. Machines can't do that. Machines are bad at general life experience. They cannot think broadly. All AI right now is called narrow AI. It is narrowly focused on being really good at one specific task, but you can't then apply that to a radically different task. You could apply it to a very similar task in something that's called transfer learning. But if you have a machine that is trained to make pancakes and you say, now make sushi, it'd be like, nope, out, peace. Right? Can't do that. Also true, machines can't really build great domain experience. They still need humans for that, to provide that domain expertise, that life experience that comes with the domain knowledge. And fourth, machines are bad at relationships. All other things being equal, people still want to work with other people. The exception being if your customer experience is so appallingly bad that people would rather deal with a machine. For example, like the Department of Motor Vehicles. Nobody wants to go there. So how are we using AI in marketing now? Well, there's a bunch of different ways. Again, from the CMO survey, content personalization sort of tops the charts, predictive analytics, targeting decisions, customer segmentation. And these are great, but these are very abstract. So let's look at some practical applications. Let's look at 5 specific applications of how we can use AI for marketing problems we face today. Problem number 1, we're unfocused. We don't know what's working and what's not. Fairly common problem. You've had that. I know I've had that. Problem 2, it's unclear. You don't know what content is priority, right? You've got so much stuff going on that you have no idea what to do next. You have a lot of data that you're not using at all, right? We all have tons of data that's just sitting around, unused, taking up space, being a security risk. Before, we're unprepared. We don't know what lays ahead, so we can't predict, we can't plan. And number 5, we don't know who is important and who's not. So let's look at these different problems and look at some solutions that AI is used for today. Problem number 1, what's working and what's not? In content marketing especially, attribution analysis is very, very difficult because a lot of the attribution models that are out there are based on very naive algorithms. Using a technique called Markov chain modeling, you can take the interactions, all the different ways that somebody gets to your content, analyze it, and figure out in what order do they have those interactions, and then how important is any given channel in those interactions. So in this example here, organic search, 26%, almost 27% of website conversions are being driven by organic search. If you think of this like Jenga, if I pull that block out, 27% of my conversions are going to collapse. That's really bad. 15% from speaking. But look at from left to right and from top to bottom. Those are not at the beginning of the customer journey. Speaking is actually towards the middle and end in terms of getting people to convert. Things like YouTube are at the very beginning. So knowing the order in which someone interacts with us is just as valuable as understanding how important that channel is. If I'm on YouTube and I'm saying, hey, buy my thing, our customer journey says, you're just getting to know me at that point. And so that would be the wrong messaging. On the other hand, our Slack group, Analytics for Marketers, at the very end, should I be doing messaging like, hey, in case you've never heard of me? Like, no, everybody knows why they're there. So my messaging should be different. So using techniques like Markov chain modeling in machine learning can help us understand our content and what works in our content and where our traffic comes from at a much deeper level. The same is true for things like lead scoring. A lot of sales CRMs and marketing automation systems have lead scoring, and they have, some rules that you can set, but fundamentally, there's no good system in a lot of today's software that says, here's the things that make for a good lead score. But with tools like IBM Watson Studio, you can build your own lead scoring models to understand what drives lead scores up or down and get a much better, more insightful look at at what's working. Number 2, unclear. You don't know what content is priority. You have 1,000 blog posts on your website. You have all this content. You have white papers and webinars and ebooks. What's working? What should be your priority? Using that same Markov chain modeling, you can do what we call most valuable page analysis. There's an apocryphal story about a college campus that didn't pave sidewalks. And they let the students wander around the campus for a year. And then the next year, they looked at where all the paths were worn in the grass, and they paved sidewalks over those. And supposedly this unnamed college, is the most pleasant campus to walk around. I don't know if this story is true or not. I've not found good evidence for it online. I've seen anecdotal stories. But the concept is sound. If there are ways people are used to going, wouldn't it make sense to try and identify those ways and then encourage people along them? Using this technique, you can look at all the different pages on your website. What pages do people go to that lead to a conversion? And then you prioritize those pages. You share more on social media. You promote them in your newsletters. You do all these things to get people to travel the paths that they'll be most comfortable and get them to convert. It's a very, very powerful tool for making the most of your content. And likewise, looking at the content that's not performing and going, what's all that have in common that it just doesn't move the needle for our audience? Prioritizing is so important. When we look at things like search engine optimization, imagine having, hundreds of thousands of search keywords. Wouldn't that be really difficult to try and come up with a strategy for if you try to rank for everything? Using a technique called clustering, you can look at what terms are grouped together in terms of number of clicks they get or how difficult it is to rank. And then you can prioritize and focus on only the things that are the highest value first. Save yourself an enormous amount of time. You can look at even topics and themes that work together. This is a piece of software called Market Muse that we've been using, that we give it a piece of content that says, hey, here are all the things that are related to clustering, related to the topic that you're trying to optimize this page for. Make sure that you check the box on these terms and hit the targets in order to stand the greatest chance of your content doing well. Right, so that solves the problem of what's priority. Once you know, based on things like your keywords and your most valuable pages, you can use advanced software to tune them up even more. Third, you don't know what's valuable in your data. At conferences like this, especially now where we're all at home, you can't talk to the person next to you because there's nobody there. We're going to be creating books of conversation, tweeting at each other, internal chat, all these things. This is from the MarTech conference last year. 30,000 words written online, mostly in tweets, in 2 days. So this group of people wrote a novel in 2 days, right? Do you have time to read a novel while at an event? I sure don't. But there's value in there if only we could unlock it. And there are some things like word clouds that are pretty cool that can give you a surface level understanding. But using techniques like text mining, natural language processing from that are artificial intelligence techniques, we can pull apart the most prominent, most important words and phrases and use that to get a very quick snapshot in near real time of what people are talking about at the event. And if we do that, then we can participate in the conversations better. We can ask better questions. When we're talking to other attendees, we can be sure to mention these things and get their perspectives on them. Like, hey, do you use agile marketing in your marketing organization? They'd be like, no. You understand based on these interactions what's happening. So mining that data. And this, by the way, is something you can do at any time, not just at a conference. Last year, we were working with a truck driving company. And they were recruiting new drivers. And they asked us to help them understand why their recruiting ads weren't going as well as they thought they should be. We dug into all 5,000 of their job ads on Indeed.com. And you got all these terms that they had in their ads very prominent. You must have this class of license and be able to do these things and have these decorations and this type of validation. And then we took 17,000 calls from their recruiters, fed it to voice recognition software, again, an AI application, and extracted the transcripts from all 17,000 and modeled those using natural language processing. And we found a whole different world. What's the pay per mile, starting cents per mile, signing bonuses? Am I home on the weekends? Do I get to see my family? All these things. And suddenly it became clear. On the one hand, job ads. Here's what you must be. On the other hand, the drivers. Do you have this? Do you have this? Do you have this? No wonder the job ads aren't working. the job ads are saying absolutely nothing of what the drivers want to hear about. And by giving them that feedback, they were able to increase the performance of their job ads by 45%, almost immediately, because they just started talking about the things that drivers wanted to know about. Will I get this? It makes the drivers more receptive when they have their interviews. It makes their ads more appealing. Imagine doing that with your content. What is your audience talking about? What are you writing about? Are they the same? Is there enough overlap that your audience feels like do they feel like you know them? That you understand them? That's what these techniques can do. Fourth application, preparing and planning ahead. Using statistical techniques and search data, we can forecast forward ahead weeks, sometimes even months, as to when people will be searching for certain specific terms and keywords. Here, for a content marketing conference, looking at what content phrases will likely be searched over time. Now, even with major global crises, a lot of these terms and phrases, as people continue to try and do business and work remotely and stuff, still are relevant, and some even more than others, because work and the world have not completely come to a stop. So being able to forecast ahead means that we can look ahead and plan ahead and create content for the kinds of things people care about well in advance. That way, we can make a determination, like, do we need to invest a lot of time in this topic when we forecast it's not going to do very well? Or, hey, we forecast this thing is suddenly spiking, we should probably do something about it. Predictive analytics gives us those capabilities, with a grain of salt that major unpredictable things like global crises can throw a wrench in some of the predictions. But there is still value in knowing what's on people's minds, or what might have been on people's minds. And fifth, understanding who we should be talking to, whether it is in conferences or whether it is in memes online. Knowing who is most talked about is a much better proxy for influence than who's got the biggest mouth. Right? So using a technique called eigenvector centrality indexing, we can take a look at interactions in conversations, interactions even in content, and identify who is the most talked about, and then produce a list of people like, these are the people that we need to speak to in the space, that you would need to speak to if you wanted to be known, if you wanted help sharing the word about your software, your products, your services, maybe even your content. You would reach out to people based on these types of algorithms. And again, many influencer marketing software packages use very primitive algorithms. Using AI gives you qualitatively and quantitatively better results, better data than you're going to get from more primitive packages, because the math makes more sense. Who you choose to talk to based on their interactions just makes a lot more sense. So those are the 5 major problems you face today in marketing that AI can help solve. All right? Answering fundamentally why, where, what, when, who. These are the questions that AI can solve for you in ways that, frankly, are difficult for non-AI solutions to tackle, especially with the amount of data we have. The important thing is that you start now. One of the reasons why big technology companies have such a commanding lead, and it's so hard to disrupt them, is because they have a massive lead time in acquiring data. Remember, data is the raw materials that AI is built on, machine learning in particular. The more of it you have, the more and better your models can perform, generally speaking. And so if you are late to the game and your competitors got 5 years of data, they have a 5-year advantage that you can never reclaim without some unusual exceptions. And so they have a very difficult advantage. So you got to start now. So how do you get started? Getting started is a 7-step process. We call it the enterprise AI journey. It begins with you having a solid foundation of data. You find, you clean, you prepare your data. You know where it is. You know who's got it. You know the governance around it. So many companies never leave this stage of the journey because they're just kind of a hot mess internally. So it's really important to have that and to focus a lot of time on it, invest in that. And these first few stages in the journey pay dividends of their own. Even if you never manage to get to cutting edge AI, just having your data in order will provide dividends to your company. measurement and analytics. You become a data-driven company, which means you make decisions with data first. Don't be in that 66% of companies that we don't know how they make their decisions, right? You identify and you measure your KPIs. You understand what happened. You build qualitative capabilities, insights and research, market research capabilities, data storytelling, things that you can do that can help explain why something happened in your data. Analytics tells you what, insights tells you why. And as we mentioned, AI requires some sizable investments. So if you have the ability to automate things, find efficiencies, scale your processes internally now, you'll free up time, people, and money to do interesting and compelling AI work. You need that in order to be able to do that, to work with AI. Now again, these first 4 steps, they're not unique to AI. You can do these and never do an AI project, but they sure do pay dividends, so I'd recommend doing them. It's at this point when your journey will split. Either you will gain these capabilities if AI is going to be something you do, or you'll look for these in your vendors. The 5th step is data science, exploring the unknowns, building those statistical and math capabilities, coding and engineering. From there, you'll start piloting your machine learning projects, advancing process automation, advancing data science, unsupervised and supervised learning. And ultimately, you become an AI-powered company at the end of your journey. Today, there's only a handful of these companies, right? You know most of them. Google, Amazon, IBM, Microsoft, Facebook, and so on and so forth, the big technology companies that are AI-first companies. That's where we want to get to at some point. But don't worry, you're not late to the party on those. Now to the question of, do you buy AI or do you build it? It depends on 3 things: time, money, and strategy. If you have time and you don't have money, you're going to build it. You have money and you don't have time, you're going to buy it. But most importantly is the strategic decision. Are you going to be using AI on your core competency? If you are, you have to build it, because that is going to be part and parcel of your secret sauce, and you do not want your secret sauce to be held hostage to a vendor that says, hey, you know what, tomorrow we're changing our rates, we're adding a 0 to our prices, and you're like, well, there goes our margin. On the other hand, if you're just using AI on ancillary capabilities and it's not applied to your core competency, then you might want to buy it. When it comes to buying AI, the good news is many of your vendors and things are already building it into their products, right? And there are plenty of applications that are easy, light lifts to get started. For example, this is one I use called Otter. It is a transcription app, otter.ai. I record, with permission, meetings and calls and stuff like that with clients and events like this, and get it transcribed so that I can provide a transcript to you after we're done with this talk, and mine it myself. Have a body of sales calls that I know went well, have a body of ones that didn't go well. Compare the two. Do we use different language? Having transcription software sure helps with that. Using tools like Google Analytics, AI is baked right into the product. If you are in the web app, as you see here, or you have the mobile app, Google will automatically tell you, hey, I noticed something unusual is happening. It has built-in anomaly detection using machine learning. And you can ask it questions like, what happened with my website yesterday? And finally, of course, there are those dedicated vendors like the market muses of the world that are, let's call them reassuringly expensive, because the quality of their work and the quality of their product is incredible. And they provide very specific applications of AI. And if you're going to buy, these are the kinds of things you'll probably want to buy. If you're going to build, the best place I recommend you start is with a tool called IBM Watson Studio. You can get started for free, 50 hours a month for free. Building in an environment that is best suited to your needs, whether it is low code and no code stuff like you see in their modeler, or whether you actually do want to code with the most popular languages, Watson Studio is the best place to start when it comes to building AI capabilities. And eventually, you'll progress to things like R and Python and the other heavy-duty AI languages to build that code. So how do you prepare your company for artificial intelligence? Well, you're going to need some people to do this. You're going to need at least 3 different kind of people. I love the expression, data is the new oil. It was coined back in 2006. And I like that expression so much because it's absolutely true. Crude oil is useless, right? It's sticky. It stains everything it touches. Doesn't really do anything useful. You have to extract it from the ground. You have to refine it, and you have to bring it to market as a finished product. The same is true of data. Your data in its raw form hidden away is not helpful, otherwise you'd already be using it, right? You need developers who can help you extract that data from where it is, connect to all those databases. You need data scientists to clean up that data, to refine it, to make it usable. And you need marketing technologists, people like you and I, who can take those outputs, those models, those software, and turn it into something that delivers business impact. That's who you're going to need. And it may be one person, probably not. It may be a team of people, depending on the size of your company, that are going to be in each of these buckets that can help you make that journey towards AI. Let's talk about you right now. You specifically, your career. How do you prepare your career for AI? The number one question people always have is, who's going to lose their jobs? Here's the thing about this. The Brookings Institute had a great saying: AI will take away tasks, not jobs. Because again, AI is applied to very narrow things right now and will be for quite a long time. Is there a task in your job that is a, repetitive task, maybe one you don't look forward to? You do it the same thing week after week. If there is, that's a good candidate for a machine to do that so that you don't have to. Now, where you will see some changes in employment is if there are jobs where that task literally is just the only thing that job does. Yes, then that is a candidate for for that task being removed. Or you remove enough basic tasks that you need fewer people to do the work. Your goal is to evolve from being the first violin to being the conductor of the orchestra, to oversee the different tasks that in many cases machines will be doing. Right? You need to focus on multidisciplinary skills. This is going to be one of the insurance policies that your career will need. When you look at the top 10 most in-demand hard skills in 2020, according to LinkedIn, look at how many of these skills there are. Artificial intelligence, number 4 on the list. But look how different these are. If you are good at one thing, like blockchain, there's a tremendous amount of automation already in blockchain. It's going to be very difficult to keep AI out of that field. But if you have skills in multiple areas, if you are good at video production and you're good at sales and you're good at analytical reasoning, you're very difficult to replace. And so focus as much as you can on building these multidisciplinary skills that will let you be more future-proof, because it's harder for machines to combine domains. Remember, we talked about that. Domain expertise and general life experience are very difficult. Learn to think algorithmically. Learn to solve problems like a machine. How do I solve this problem? Not right now, but how do I solve it for all time? If you have got a problem that you contend with frequently, how do you automate that? How do you turn that into a process that you can make 90% of that task go away? You'll provide tremendous benefit to being, again, the overseer of the machines if you have that. Speaking of which, machine oversight is good. It's practically a career unto itself. It has been for a couple of years, and it's going to continue to be. Because machines are only as good as the data we give to train them, and the assumptions we make when we build algorithms that become machine learning models. In 2016, ProPublica did an amazing piece on police departments trying to predict recidivism using AI. Recidivism means the probability that someone will commit a crime again. The algorithm they came up with, 20% correct, right? It was appalling. Whoever wrote it did a terrible job. You'd be better off flipping a coin. You get more right that way. But the algorithm predicted that African Americans would commit crimes 5 times more than they were actually did. There was a bias in the algorithm, and that was biased against people. So being the one to oversee machines to say, what you just spit out, not okay, not working, is so important. Another example, Amazon, a couple of years ago, tried to build an HR recruiting system using AI. It stopped hiring women. It stopped pulling resumes from women. Like, what happened there? Well, it turns out, for this particular set of jobs in development, it was trained on a corpus of resumes that were like 90% male. So of course the machine's going to say, hey, we can infer a female gender and say that's probably not qualified. Right? You got to be able to oversee the machines. And one of the great dangers of AI is that, to quote Jeff Goldblum's character from Jurassic Park, You're so preoccupied with whether or not you could that you didn't stop to think if you should. Should we try and solve this problem with AI? It's a very important question. And if so, what is likely to go wrong? Be outcome focused. Let the machines do the heavy lifting. I used to have in my a cubicle when I worked in an office, I used to have this chart on how to apply Keras, which is a deep learning interface. And I was like struggling to learn the different functions and things on here. I got like halfway through it. And then I went to IBM Think in 2018, and they're like, that's silly. Why would you do that? Just use the modeler and just drag and drop the pieces together. Don't code it. Just as long as you know what the pieces do, chain them together and you do it. Like, oh, okay. So that was 9 months of my life I'm never getting back. But if we're outcome focused, if we know what the goal is, we can let the machines do the heavy lifting. I went to Think last year in 2019, and they're like, oh, we don't do that drag and drop thing anymore. Now the machine just does it for you, and you inspect the output, and you say yes or no. This was a good or bad example using something called auto AI. That's what you want to be. You want to be the person who oversees the machine, who says, yes, that was good. No, that was not good. Now, where's this stuff going? How's this going to impact content marketing as the future goes on? Number one, there's this amazing amount of work being done in what's called natural language generation. I took a bunch of questions from a Twitter chat, and I fed them to a piece of software called GPT-2 from the OpenAI Institute. I said, make me a new Twitter chat. And based on its own models, plus what I had tuned it with, it spit out a huge, huge number of questions for a Twitter chat. So now I don't have to do that anymore. But it's writing, it's creating based on patterns. Now, it is not aware. If you were, and you can try this, if you typed in, the words, what is 2 plus 2, ? The logical response would be the word 4. Right? But the machine doesn't know that, and because it's not comprehending, it's just pattern matching. But it's still pattern matching in incredible ways that generate crazy good outputs. So with guidance, expect to see this type of technology appearing in content marketing software that will maybe do the first draft of the blog post or the video script or whatever, and then you would help tune it as, again, the conductor of the orchestra. Another example from NVIDIA, a piece of software called Gaogan. In a interface like Microsoft Paint, you would do some art. Here's a lovely piece I did, right? That's not going to win any awards. But using then deep learning, it can take my terrible drawing and create photorealistic renderings of what a similar environment would look like based on what I drew. Now, this to me is incredibly inspirational because it means that the limitations we have as human beings are on our ambitions only now. As these technologies approach, you want to write a novel, but you're not a good writer. Cool, GPT-2 can help. You want to paint, but you're not a very good painter. Gaogan can help. There are tools like Ava and Melnet. You want to write a symphony, but you can't play instruments and you don't know music. But you have enough to get the basics in. The machines will help us. And that to me is the frontier that I'm so excited about and I'm so eager to see, is unlocking human potential. Because now I can paint, more or less. Now I can write the great American novel. And these are things that I couldn't do before. So I want to leave you on that note. AI is changing our world. It's changing our marketing. It's changing your content marketing. It will radically change it in the years to come. But as much as there are cautions and challenges, there's also tremendous opportunity for you to do the things that in your heart you've always wanted to do, but you didn't have the time to learn. The machines can now help you fulfill that and help you reach your potential as a human being and as a person. Thank you for watching this session. If you have questions, please feel to get in touch with me. Here's my contact information. There's a book about this called AI for Marketers, which you can find at this URL. And again, the slides and materials are available here. Thank you for watching. I look forward to talking to you soon. Take care.